The tide of the war turned, and instead of working under the threat of Nazi invasion, our workspeople toiled with the hope of our invasion as their spur. And then came one of their most hectic periods. Here are some of them constructing boats, fast motorboats, at the Eastleigh shops for coming excitements. Girls and men worked side by side, sharing the same work. All of them deserve this brief pictorial tribute to their skill and industry. To carry our invasion troops onto the French beaches, the southern shops made any number of these flat-bottomed LCPs, landing craft personnel. This construction work was completely new to the workshop's people, and although it is more than likely that many of them had often pushed the boat out before, few, if any, attempted to build one. On completion, the LCPs were moved to Southampton, where they took to the water like the proverbial duck. The safety of our troops was the responsibility of the builders of these landing craft, and, as it proved, in them nobody got the wrong sort of letdown in the channel. Another type of invasion craft constructed in the southern shops, harbour launches, used for general purposes and capable of carrying 50 men or stores. These launches were constructed over wooden jigs, which, as soon as work was sufficiently forward, were removed to give the workers access to the insides. The first skin was put on in strips, all laid in one direction. The strips were clamped and riveted in place. A second skin was then overlaid, the strips running in the opposite direction, so that the strain would be equal and that the body would retain its shape when the jig was removed. This view gives some idea of the finished article. The launch was now ready for fitting and finishing and for all those other processes which make a vessel seaworthy. They brought on the girls to do what was known as driving and clenching boat nails, and at the end of their act the boys came back to install the engines and perform intricate and delicate feats of wiring and all the other things which made these craft so dependable. Incidentally, these harbour launches were so large it was quite impossible to get them out of the shops in the normal way, and so traversers, usually employed to remove railway coaches from the carriage works to the running track, were called in to handle this special job, in which they proved most effective. And here was something to get steamed up about: keels for assault landing craft. The wood had to be bent into the required shape to form the keels of the vessels, and to effect this easily, it was first steamed and softened. When the wood had become sufficiently amenable to discipline, it was removed from the steamer and laid on the keel blocks, where, with the aid of artfully placed wedges and gentle taps from that most useful tool, the persuader, it began to take shape. The first stage of the construction work was done. Frames of a peculiar shape were fitted to the keel and knocked into position. A few more of these, and the craft assumed an odd Noah's Ark appearance, which rather appealed to one's sense of humour. Then came the first layer of the sides, the inner skin. This was of wood cut in sections and measured accurately to fractions of an inch. The wood was afterwards covered by the real thing, the armour plating which converted Noah's Ark into a war vessel capable of withstanding any sort of flood. Then the fitting began, a charmingly vague term. By this time the shop's workpeople had become experienced boat builders, and it isn't surprising that among all the craft which they had constructed for the invasion, none was reported to have been a dud. It's only right to give those workers this verbal pat on the back which they so well deserve. There goes an assault landing craft, just one of the many things made in the southern workshops which cannot by any means be allied to normal railway work. Hats off to you, Eastleigh. The second front was now the subject of practically every conversation one overheard. In the Southern's workshops, they didn't just talk about it. There, great preparations for the Allied invasion of Europe were taking place. Here are some of the MLCs, motor lighter craft, in the course of construction. These craft were intended primarily for carrying tanks. Heavy armour plate was a notable feature of these vessels, particularly on the steersman's shelter, the nerve centre in which was located the steering gear, radio and other important gadgets. Day by day, the building of the MLCs progressed noticeably. These craft were very satisfactory things to work on, as they so forcefully suggested the aggressive power quite in keeping with their intended function. One of their more interesting features was the formidable-looking front door. Well, a front door, if you can use such a term in connection with such a war machine. At any rate, a door which could be let down rather like a drawbridge to enable the tanks carried inside the vessel to run out under their own power when the invasion beach was reached. The very size of these MLCs made their removal from their birthplace a matter of careful calculation and even more careful execution. As a point of interest, the doors of this particular shop where the vessel was made had to be specially enlarged to afford a comfortable exit. Meticulous road transport organisation was necessary for the conveyance of the motor lighter craft from the shops at Eastleigh to Southampton docks. As these craft were an out-of-gauge load, this journey could not be covered by rail. En route to Southampton, special traffic police cleared the way before them. All other traffic was parked on the roadside to give the MLCs a free and unhindered passage. On arrival at the dock gates, the Southern Railway's Southampton staff took over the job of transferring the craft from the lorries across the quays to the river. Sheer legs assisted in the launching, the first real test of the workshop people's skill at boat building. Back at Eastleigh, a last look round the boat-building section revealed one more important craft which should be mentioned, the LCSM, short for Landing Craft Support Medium. These big boats were designed to cover our invasion troops as they landed from their LCPs, and for this purpose they were made additionally strong. The steel plating which covered them was a great help in that connection. The high elevation of their guns enabled them to engage enemy planes as well as ground targets. There goes a helpful contribution to the invasion fleet with best wishes from the Eastleigh shops.